We have a bombshell Chicago Bears report to react to here on Bears Now by Chat Sports. My name is Harrison Graham. I've been sicking as a dog. You can probably tell in my voice, in my face. I've barely gotten out of bed this week, but when Dan Wiederer drops a bombshell article about some of the key decisions Ryan Poles has made, we got to talk about it here on this channel. So that's what we are doing here today. If you want to show some love, show some support that I'm battling through. I got nose stuff, cough, all kinds of stuff. Trying to get you guys some content here today. Going to try and do a Ben Johnson video tomorrow, so reporting on that as well. If you want to show some love, subscribe to the channel. It's 100% free. Okay. I've got 4 big takeaways from this article from Wiederer, which I highly recommend you guys go check out. I think the Tribune has a $1 discount right now, so go check that out if you want. But I'm going to hit some of the cliff notes here, and a lot of this is pretty damning on Ryan Poles. Now, the timing of this is very interesting. Is there a power struggle in the building between Poles and Kevin Warren? Certainly feels like that could be possible. But let's kind of get on into it here. My first takeaway, and look, this is one man's reporting. There's been reports on both sides of the coin. Who knows? But I've kind of been leaning this way for a while for what I believe to be true. And based on Dan Wiederer's reporting, Ryan Poles wanted Matt Eberflus as his head coach, and he wanted him back this year. There's been all kinds of debate. Was Eberflus forced onto Poles? Did Bill Polian make that call and Poles didn't have a choice? There were only 3 finalists. Maybe Poles didn't want to rustle feathers as a 36-year-old first-time GM. That I could believe a little bit. Like, well, I'll just pick one of these 3 guys. Let's just get into the reporting. Direct quote from Wiederer in this article. To be clear, Eberflus was never forced on Poles, at least not by anyone employed at Halas Hall. The 2 share representation, and agent Trace Armstrong, and per Poles' account, had become friendly after meeting years back through mutual acquaintances. Some inside Halas Hall hoped those kinds of results, just talking about how Eberflus blew 3 double-digit fourth-quarter leads in his second year. This is getting to the bringing him back for his 3rd season. Some inside Halas Hall hoped those kinds of results in measuring stick moments would carry more weight in Poles' evaluation of Eberflus, and at the very least challenge the GM's optimism and loyalty. They didn't. So based on Wiederer's reporting, that was a quote from a source inside Halas Hall. Based on Wiederer's reporting, Ryan Poles and Ryan Poles alone made the decision to bring in Matt Eberflus. Sure, was there influence that he was already a finalist? Yes. Okay, even if you want to give him a pass for that, it is pretty clear at this point that Ryan Poles brought back Matt Eberflus this season, despite people inside the building being hesitant at that decision. So we can nitpick and question the process in 2022 of how they ended up with Eberflus in the first place, but I think it is safe to say, and we've heard Poles speak highly of Eberflus on numerous occasions, that this was his guy. He believed in him. There's parts in this article that Ryan Poles talked about the steadiness that Eberflus showed last year despite an 0-4 start to finish somewhat strong. I truly believe in my heart at this point that Poles thought Eberflus was the guy, that he believed in him, that he thought he was the coach that could get this organization back to prominence. So we could say, well, maybe they were pointed in the Eberflus direction when he became the GM. Okay, fine. I'll even concede that. I don't necessarily think it's the case, but I will concede that. I think there's very little doubt at this point that Poles wanted to bring back Eberflus in 2024 when others inside the building did not. And what did I say this time last year, or about January of last year? I said Ryan Poles should not bring back Matt Eberflus. Don't die with Matt Eberflus. Because once he made that decision to bring him back, there was a chance we'd end up where we are now, where Eberflus is gone and Poles could be on the hot seat himself. And I do think, and we'll kind of get to this further when we get to the end of my takeaways here, I think there's a real chance, I'd say at least 50-50, that Poles is not back as the GM of this football team next year. I really do believe it. I think that press conference a couple of weeks ago was very telling. Kevin Warren's in charge. And I just think Poles' bad decision-making has caught up to him a little bit here. Let's get to takeaway number 2. Again, excellent reporting from Wiederer here. The Colts were going to fire Matt Eberflus if he did not land a head coaching job. Think about that. Here's the direct quote. The Bears' initial union with Eberflus elicited more shrugs around the NFL than commendations. Multiple league sources have told the Tribune that had the Bears not hired Eberflus, the Colts were set to fire him. And he quite possibly might have had to seek a position coach role elsewhere in the league. So, if that is true, they hired a guy who was going to be fired and likely have to go back to being a linebackers coach elsewhere. The Bears hired him to be their head coach. That's pretty unbelievable. Now, again, pre-polls, I can't remember who all was on the hiring search team. Bill Polian, George McCaskey, Ted Phillips, a couple other guys. They made Matt Eberflus a finalist before polls got here. Cool, no problem whatsoever. But Wiederer put in this report that Ryan Poles had come up with the checklist and that Eberflus checked all of his boxes for what he was looking for in a head coach. So again, I think Eberflus was Poles' guy, and they hired a guy that the Colts quite possibly, and according to this, were probably not going to retain. That's shocking to me that you could make that decision, that you could go that route, that you could bring in a guy that another team was going to fire as their coordinator. And he certainly wasn't bad as the Colts defensive coordinator, top 11 defenses, according to DVOA, all 4 years he was there. I've said it on this program. I think he could have success as a DC somewhere. But the fact that they were going to fire him is pretty remarkable. It's pretty remarkable. And only the Bears would choose a coach that was set to be fired by another team. All right, more reaction to come, but first, I do want to get in a word from our sponsor, Prize Picks. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's episode of Chicago Bears Now. And this holiday season, you can win up to 200 times your money on a single entry from Prize Picks when you sign up today. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS. Daily fantasy made easy with Prize Picks. I had my worst year ever in my season-long fantasy football league. I went 4-10. That's where Prize Picks comes into play. New lineups every single day can change. My lineups can change sports, can cross over sports within my entries. I just pick 2 or more players, up to 6, and pick more or less based on the stat projections available. Yards, touchdowns, points, rebounds, goals in hockey and soccer, assists, three-pointers made, all kinds of stuff. Pick more, pick less based on players available. And if you hit, you make money. And check this out. Get a hold of this. When you use our link, prizepicks.com/CLNS, sign up today, create an account, and use the code CLNS. All you got to do is set your first lineup for $5. Doesn't matter if you win or lose, you're going to get a $50 bonus into your account, extra money to play with. How awesome is that? Take advantage today, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a $50 bonus when you play for just $5. All right. Sorry, guys, clearly struggling here. Takeaway number 3. Poles was all in on Shane Waldron. And I think we kind of knew that based on his reaction last week or the week before, whenever that presser was, with how kind of just didn't know how to answer the question he was when asked about the hiring of Shane Waldron. Remember, he was quiet for like 10 seconds, and then he kind of just stumbled through the answer. This is directly from Wiederer's report. Quote, Poles also zeroed in on what he identified as impressive adaptability in Waldron. He believes Waldron had proved he could adjust not only to unforeseen situations within games, but also with his interactions from player to player. Those skills, the Bears were convinced, would aid the evolution of an offense that was reinventing itself after a significant personnel overhaul. Impressive adaptability. Did Shane Waldron demonstrate that once in the 9 games he was here? They had a few good games with him here, but I can't think of a single time where he made an impressive adjustment within a game. I really can't. And one thing he clearly could not do, and that speaks to this quote from Poles, who told the Tribune this last spring, according to Wiederer, quote, through the interview process, I was blown away by his communication skills with us. Blown away by his communication skills. I watched all of Shane Waldron's press conferences. He does not communicate well. He is not a good public speaker. Now, I don't know how he is in closed rooms. I don't know how he is in closed with players. I would say it's pretty safe to say he's not a very good communicator. Now, doesn't mean he can't design plays, call plays, all this other stuff, although I don't think he did that very well here in Chicago, but clearly had some success in Seattle. How could you come away? They interviewed, I think, 9 guys to be their offensive coordinator. Waldron was the only one they interviewed twice, and after the second one, they were blown away by his communication skills. I mean, did Shane Waldron hire a doppelganger to do the interviews for him when they brought him into Halas Hall? Like, he does not exactly scream top-level communication skills, confidence when he talks. I mean, that is pretty shocking when you read and hear that. So that's not just an Eberflus decision. That's on Poles too. They interviewed Cliff Kingsbury, doing much better. Clint Kubiak, when the Saints have been healthy, they've been a much better offense than the Bears. Zach Robinson, I know the Falcons are in a funk, but they've still been better than the Bears, and Kirk Cousins is coming off a torn Achilles, and it limits what they can call offensively. Like, they interviewed Thomas Brown, who's been better than obviously Shane Waldron was. They picked basically the worst guy they interviewed. I mean, it's pretty shocking how bad they screwed this thing up. And then lastly, it sounds like Ryan Poles basically went rogue on the decision to sign Nate Davis. Quote, the Bears released Davis last month, a few days after what multiple sources said was a squabble with the coaching staff over his role for the Week 10 game against the Patriots. After practicing the entire week, Davis reported back tightness to the team. Medical staff on the morning of the game was declared out, sent home on a day where offensive line depth was an issue. That was the final straw for Davis, who had been known around the building for more than a year as an always something guy and a poor teammate. It didn't help that Poles signed Davis despite in-house warnings from the coaching staff that he had a reputation for being apathetic and lacking the kind of football passion Poles normally gravitates toward. And it was reported by Bill Zimmerman at the time that Mike Vrabel, maybe potential future Bears head coach, hated Nate Davis. Didn't like his practice habits. Sounds like people inside Halas Hall were aware of those. Poles signed him anyway. And what did Poles and Eberflus preach when they took this job? We want guys who love football, who are all about football. It was clear, and I get it. He had the family situation. Forget the first year. It was clear even this year. Nate Davis did not care about football. Everyone knew it. So it's one thing to sign him, go rogue apparently and do it. It's another thing to keep him as long as he did. Like, that's not good, man. That's not good. It tells me you have questionable decision-making skills. It tells me that you don't, and I get it, as a GM, sometimes you're going to get advice from people around you, and sometimes you have to make a gut decision. You're in charge of the operation. But when you do that, and it fails that poorly, you're going to get questioned. You're going to be doubted from your peers, from the public, from this fan base. Like, I defended Ryan Poles for a long time. I think the teardown he did was pretty good. He's got the Bears in a good cap situation with good draft capital. But a lot of the decisions to build this team back up, and more importantly, his over-loyalty to Eberflus, it's one thing to pick him initially. You're a 36-year-old first-time GM. Fair enough. It was crystal clear. When you decided you were changing quarterbacks last year, you had to change head coaches, and you didn't do it. You thought Eberflus could steady the ship. Horrible, horrible decision. And I said it at the time. It would be a shame if Ryan Poles got sunk with the Matt Eberflus ship. And I really do think at this point, there's a greater chance of that happening than not. I think if you asked me today, Friday the 13th, ironically, full moon tonight, will Ryan Poles be back as the GM next season? I would say no. I think there's a greater chance than he isn't. Quite frankly, he might just walk away. It might just be one of these, like, we're not going to fire you, but mutual parting ways. Maybe he just says, I'm done with this. I do think the timing of all this is interesting. Like, is this reporting today? Is this people who are, Team Kevin Warren? or other people inside the building. And then earlier this week, it was reported that Ryan Poles doesn't like the structure of having to report to Kevin Warren. There seems to be this power struggle and this leakage of inside Halas Hall to the media that all these reports are dropping, some on the pro Poles side, some on the pro Warren side. It's been a problem all year. Too much stuff has leaked publicly, and that's what happens when you're a bad football team. That's what happens when your organization lacks leadership and lacks structure. And do I trust Kevin Warren to get this right? Probably not. But there's a lot of stink in this organization, and Ryan Poles' fingerprints are on a lot of it. They just are. He can't dodge blame for all of this stuff. Certainly some of it. It's not his fault Matt Eberflus didn't know how to handle late game situations. But we knew that last year, and he brought him back this year anyway. Like, at some point, you may just have to say, you know what? I don't really believe Kevin Warren when it comes to football decisions, but maybe firing Poles and bringing in a new GM and a new head coach is just the way to go. Maybe that's just what you have to do, because it's hard to have faith in anything connected to the Poles Eberflus regime at this point in time. So you guys let me know. Will Ryan Poles be back next year? As of now, I would lean no. I don't think he will be. Yes or no? Give me your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if I'm feeling better. Try to get you guys another video tomorrow. I'm battling through it right now, trying to grind for you guys. Sorry about the no live show yesterday, but as you guys can tell, it's been a struggle bus here for your boy. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. See you guys soon. Bear down.